you ever been in a building, maybe your office, a hospital, even a big shop where everything just works, you know? The air feels right, it's clean, safe, easy to get around, technology just connects. And then have you experienced the opposite?
Oh, definitely. Where things feel broken, maybe a bit inefficient, frustrating.
Or even unsafe. Well, there's a hidden engine behind those experiences.
Absolutely. It's not like magic, it's intentional.
Yeah.
It's about designing and managing the place and its services so they actively support the people and what they're doing there.
Exactly. And that engine, it's called facility management, or FM. But, you know, for it to run smoothly, it needs a kind of blueprint. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're unpacking the core ideas, the requirements for really effective FM, using an international standard as our guide.
Right. And our source material for this is BSEN ISO 41001.201T. That's the standard for facility management systems.
Okay, let's dive in then. Our mission today, to cut through some of the jargon and really get what this standard is trying to do, why it was needed, and how having this kind of structured approach provides that blueprint.
A blueprint that goes beyond just, you know, fixing leaks.
Yeah, exactly. Something that genuinely helps an organization succeed. By the end, you should have that shortcut, that clear picture of how a system like this affects everything. Your workspace, maybe a whole campus, productivity, safety, well-being, the whole 9 yards.
So maybe start at the beginning. What actually is facility management at its core according to a standard like this?
Because it's much broader than just maintenance,
Yeah.
right? The standards intro says it integrates multiple disciplines.
Integration, that feels like the key word. And the source gives hints of the range, impacts everything from, say, efficiency in a warehouse.
Yeah, like the worker example.
All the way to emergency response and safety. You know, firefighters making sure a building's secure. And that broad influence is interesting because FM isn't just about the building itself. It directly hits an organization's efficiency and productivity. If the facility doesn't work well, the business doesn't either.
Makes sense.
But maybe even more crucial, the standard points out how FM affects the health, well-being, and quality of life for people through the services it delivers.
Like the air quality, the lighting, safety, that's all FM.
Exactly.
And before the standard, even though FM was doing all this important stuff, there wasn't really a globally agreed way of doing it, was there? Practices were kind of all over the place.
Precisely. That lack of a common language, a common approach, that's why ISO 41001 came about, to give a consistent basis. So everyone understands FM the same way.
Yeah.
Can assess it, measure it globally.
There's some clarity.
And credibility, yeah.
And the standard is pretty clear about the benefits, right? What does it say it aims to deliver?
It lists quite a few, and they apply anywhere, really. Things like improved workforce productivity, better safety, health, well-being, clearer communication about needs and services, more efficiency and effectiveness, which, you know, means cost benefits.
Always good.
More consistent service delivery, and just providing that common platform for any organization to work from.
So how does it actually deliver these? The standard's built around this idea of a management system. What does that mean here?
Right. A management system, think of it like the internal operating system for FM within an organization. It's a defined set of bits that interact, like structure, roles, planning, operations.
Okay.
All designed to establish the policies, set the objectives, and create the processes you need to actually achieve those FM goals.
And a big part of this is the process approach. The standard says organizations are really just collections of linked activities, processes, taking inputs, making outputs.
Exactly. And if you manage these as interconnected processes, not just separate tasks, you get better control over the links, the dependencies. You can make the whole system work better together towards an outcome.
And the framework guiding this is something many people might know. Plan, Do, Check, Act, PDCA.
Yes, that's the fundamental loop for continuous improvement. Plan is where you set your objectives and figure out the processes to deliver on your FM policy.
Okay.
Do is that implementing the plan, running the processes.
Right.
Check is where you monitor, measure how you're doing against those objectives, and report back.
And Act?
Act is taking what you learned from check and using it to improve things, improve the processes, the system itself. Then you loop back to plan.
And the standard actually maps its requirements onto this PDCA cycle, doesn't it? Clauses 4 through 10.
That's right.
And there's a key diagram in the standard showing how this FM system interacts with something called the demand organization.
Yes, that interaction is crucial. The demand organization, that's the main business. The university, the hospital, the bank, the part that needs the facilities to work.
Got it.
The FM organization is the team or the provider delivering the FM services. Could be internal, could be external, but the standard is clear. They can't be silos.
They have to work together.
Exactly. Effective FM has to understand and support the strategy and needs of that demand organization. It's a partnership, really.
Okay, so we've got the core ideas. FM is broad, multidisciplinary, impacts people and performance. We needed a standard for consistency. It uses a management system.
Driven by processes and PDCA.
And FM has to align with the core business. So let's get into the blueprint itself. The structure of ISO 41001. Clause 4. Context of the organization.
Right. It starts there. Before you manage facilities well, you need to understand the world you're operating in. Makes sense.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Identifying external and internal issues relevant to the organization's purpose. What kind of issues?
Well, the guidance gives good examples. It's things like your property strategy growing, shrinking, the condition of your buildings, are they old, need work.
Okay.
Also the competitive environment, business risks, how reliable your suppliers are, internal policies, the company culture, even things like innovation drivers. All these things shape what FM needs to do.
And it's not just about the organization itself, but also who is affected and what they need. Clause 4.2, interested parties and their needs and expectations.
Exactly. Who are the stakeholders? Obvious ones are employees, the people using the space, but also government, regulators, your own service providers, maybe the local community.
And what kind of needs?
It covers explicit requirements like, say, safety rules, but also the implied stuff, like just expecting a comfortable place to work. Understanding their needs is fundamental. It tells you what services need to do, what the priorities are.
So you take those issues, those needs, and that helps define the scope of the FM system in 4.3, like what's actually included, which buildings, which services.
Precisely. The scope has to consider all that stuff from 4.1 and 4.2. It also needs to think about how it fits with other management systems the organization might have, like quality or safety.
Right.
And the guidance really stresses that the scope needs to look at long-term needs too and be flexible. Things change.
Okay, so Clause 4 sets the stage, and Clause 5 is leadership. This feels really important.
Oh, it's absolutely vital. Without active leadership and commitment from the top brass, 5.1, any management system just fizzles out. They have to make sure the FM policy, the FM objectives, line up with the overall strategic direction of the main business. They need to make sure resources are there, champion why FM matters, coordinate it, link it to risk management.
So it's more than just signing checks, it's active involvement. And part of that is setting the FM policy itself in 5.2.
Yeah, the policy is the guiding statement. It clarifies what FM is trying to achieve, sets the relationship between FM and the demand org, defines expectations for services and outcomes.
And what makes it useful?
Well, the guidance says it needs to be accessible, kept up to date, communicated. And critically, it shouldn't clash with other company policies, HR, procurement, risk. It even suggests linking to risk standards like ISO 31000.
And 5.3 is about clear roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Seems basic, but essential here.
It is. You need clarity. Who's responsible for what? Who has the authority to make decisions? Who's ultimately accountable for making sure the whole FM system works as intended, prevents things falling through the cracks?
Okay. Context understood, leadership set. Clause 6 moves to planning. How does the standard tackle FM planning?
It starts with looking at risks and opportunities, 6.1. So FM needs to proactively think about what could go wrong, things that might hurt service delivery or the business.
Like a power cut or a security issue.
Exactly. The guidance mentions a whole range. Technical risks like equipment failing, financial risks, environmental stuff, social factors, even political risks.
Wow, broad.
Yeah. And you also need to look for opportunities and ways to improve add value. The standard requires planning actions to deal with the risks and grab the opportunities. The guidance actually links this to planning for business continuity, like using ISO 223801.
Makes sense. And planning isn't just about risks, it's setting goals. Clause 6.2, FM objectives and planning how to achieve them.
Right. These are your specific targets for FM performance. They absolutely must align with the big organizational objectives and that FM policy leadership set.
Okay.
They should be measurable, ideally, and consider those interested parties we talked about. The planning part then gets into the details. What specific actions are needed? What resources? Who's responsible? When will it get done? And how will you check the results?
Sounds thorough.
And the guidance adds a good point.
Yeah.
Think about different planning horizons. Short-term, medium-term, long-term goals.
Okay, Clause 7. This is where you build the foundation to actually do the work. Support.
Yep. This is about making sure you have what you need, the necessary resources, 7.1. That means the right people, enough money, materials, tools, equipment. You need to figure out the demand for services and plan how to meet it.
And having resources includes having the right people. Clause 7.2 is competence.
Absolutely essential. The folks doing the FM work need the right background, education, training, experience. The standard says you have to figure out what competencies are needed. Make sure your staff have them. The guidance mentions things like certifications here.
Okay.
Get that competence if it's missing, maybe through training or hiring. And crucially, keep records to prove it. And plan for future skills you might need too.
Then there's awareness, 7.3. It's not just leaders needing to know the plan.
No. Everyone involved needs to understand the FM policy, the strategic goals it supports, how their job contributes, and importantly, what happens if they don't follow the system requirements. It builds that sense of shared responsibility.
And linking everyone. Communication, 7.4. How's that handled?
It's treated as a planned process, and it has to be two-way. You need to figure out what to communicate, why, when, who to talk to, and how. And then check if your communication is actually working. FM deals with so many different groups. Clear communication is just vital.
Clause 7.5. Documented information. This sounds like the paperwork, procedures, records.
Pretty much. It's managing all the info the FM system needs to work properly.
Yeah.
The policy, objectives, how-to guides for processes, records of what happened. The standard says this info needs to be created properly, kept up to date, and controlled so it's available, correct, and protected when needed. The guidance really emphasizes information governance.
And lists the huge range of data FM uses.
Yeah, asset details, service reports, financial data, contracts, loads of stuff. It stresses keeping data consistent and traceable. It even points to standards like ISO IEC 27001 for information security. You could think of documented information as the nervous system of the FM operation.
That's a good way to put it. If it's not healthy, the whole thing struggles. And finally, under support, managing organizational knowledge, 7.6.
This is about capturing that know-how, the experience within the FM team and the wider organization, so you don't lose valuable knowledge when people leave.
Right.
And it helps support innovation and learning. It needs to be captured and shared.
Okay, so context set, direction clear, plans made, support built. Clause 8 is operation. This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly. This is about actually doing it, implementing the plans and processes. Operational planning and control, 8.1, means putting those defined processes into action day to day.
Like what kind of processes?
The guidance gives examples: managing relationships, managing resources based on demand capacity planning, basically making sure you meet service level agreements, project management for bigger jobs. It also covers managing plan changes and handling unexpected stuff that comes up.
And part of operating is dealing with everyone FM impacts. Clause 8.2 is coordination with interested parties.
Yeah, managing those relationships, particularly with the end users, and coordinating FM activities like maintenance or cleaning so they cause minimal disruption to the main business. FM is there to support, not hinder.
Makes sense. And then a really key bit in 8.3, integration of services. This ties back to FM being multidisciplinary.
Yes, absolutely. This clause is about showing how the different FM functions, say maintenance, security, cleaning, maybe even the IT support for the building systems, work together smoothly.
Not just separate teams doing their own thing.
Right. The guidance talks about looking for synergies, using consistent data across different functions, linking back to Clause 7, creating integrated workflows, using technology to connect things, fostering innovation across the whole service delivery.
How do you achieve that integration effectively?
Well, the guidance suggests considering competencies, making sure FM decisions are part of strategic planning, taking a life cycle view of assets, and measuring performance across the integrated services. It's about shifting from silos to a unified, efficient operation. Think old assembly line versus modern integrated manufacturing.
Good analogy. Okay, so you're operating the system. How do you know if it's actually working well? Clause 9, performance evaluation.
This starts with monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, 9.1. First, you have to decide what needs watching, linking it back to your strategy and critical services.
Okay.
Then you set performance criteria. The guidance makes a useful distinction here between strategic KPIs and more routine operational indicators. You choose your methods, decide when to measure and evaluate, and crucially, keep records as evidence.
And the evaluation isn't just about the numbers.
No, it's about assessing the overall effectiveness of the whole FM system. Is it actually achieving what it set out to do?
And a key part of checking is internal audit, 9.2.
Right. These are planned checks. Do we meet our own requirements? Do we meet the ISO 41001 standards requirements? Is the system actually being implemented effectively and kept up?
What's the goal of the audit?
Consistent conformity, hitting objectives, and spotting areas for improvement. The guidance points towards established auditing standards, like ISO 19011, for how to do this properly.
And that's different from the management review in 9.3.
Yes, very different. Management review is usually done by top management, maybe once a year. It's a higher level look at the entire FM system. Is it still suitable for our needs? Is it adequate? Is it effective? Is it still helping us achieve our strategic goals?
So more strategic.
Exactly. It looks at performance trends, changes in the business environment, audit results, feedback, and decides if changes are needed to the FM system itself.
Okay, nearly there. Clause 10 wraps it up with improvement. How do you make the system better?
It starts with dealing with things when they go wrong. Nonconformity and corrective action, 10.1. A nonconformity is just when a requirement isn't met, a service failure, a process not followed.
What do you do?
First, react, control the situation, fix the immediate problem. But then, and this is critical, the standard says you must investigate the cause. Why did it happen?
Root cause analysis.
Exactly, the guidance mentions that. You need to figure out the root cause to stop it happening again. Then you implement corrective actions, check they worked, and maybe update the system if the problem showed a weakness.
And where do these nonconformities get flagged?
All sorts of ways. Could be a simple fault report, a customer complaint, survey results, performance data showing a variance.
So fix the symptom and the cause, and then there's the bigger picture, continual improvement, 10.2.
Yeah, this is about the organization actively looking for ways to improve the whole FM system. It's suitability, adequacy, effectiveness. It means fostering innovation, tweaking processes, welcoming change, using feedback, constantly evolving.
And beyond fixing things or general improvement, there's preventative actions, 10.3.
This is about being proactive, setting up ways to spot potential problems or gaps before they actually cause a nonconformity.
Like how?
The guidance suggests things like benchmarking, seeing how others do it, sharing best practices, analyzing customer feedback surveys for hints of trouble, looking at data for potential failure points. If you find a potential gap, you address it, maybe change the system, kind of like a corrective action, but before anything goes wrong.
So bringing this all back, why does this whole standard, ISO 41001, matter to you, the listener? It sounds quite structured.
It is structured, yeah, but that's its strength. It gives you a solid, internationally recognized framework, and any organization, big, small, public, private, can use it to manage its facilities better. It's not just about getting a certificate, though you can.
It's more like a roadmap, isn't it? To get from those frustrating, maybe inefficient spaces we mentioned at the start to places that really work. Environments that boost productivity, ensure safety, manage risks properly, optimize costs, and actually turn FM into something strategic, something that really supports the core business.
Yeah, it ensures that engine behind your physical space runs smoothly, effectively.
So here's a final thought. The standard itself points out FM's impact goes wide: economy, society, individual quality of life.
Right.
So does committing to a structured, effective FM approach, like the one in ISO 41001, does that become more than just a smart business move for efficiency? Does it maybe start to look like a kind of corporate or social responsibility?
That's a really interesting question to ponder, isn't it?
It's definitely something to think about. Thank you for providing the source material that let us do this deep dive into facility management systems.
And we hope this walkthrough of ISO 41001 gives you, our listeners, a much clearer picture of what good FM involves and the difference it can make. You can definitely use this structure as a starting point if you want to explore the standard further yourself.